The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
You're welcome along to the Football Show. Nathan with you for the next hour. It is Liverpool 1, Leicester 0 and Wolves 0, Arsenal 1, with an hour gone in both of this evening's Premier League games. Diogo Jota with the goal for Liverpool 10 minutes before half-time at Anfield. They have just brought on Mo Salah and Harvey Elliott in the past couple of moments. Liverpool pretty dominant in that game as they look to move back within 9 points of Manchester City at the top with a game in hand. While Arsenal right in the mix for the top four in the Premier League, 1-0 up against Wolves at Molineux. That goal came from Gabriel in the first half. Both those games then just over the hour mark. We keep an eye on them over the next little while. And both Liverpool and Leicester will be among our live games on Sundays off the ball, with the Premier League fully back after its winter break. Liverpool go to Burnley at Turf Moor 2 o'clock. Myself and Brian Kerr will be on that one, and then Vinnie Perth and Richie McCormick will talk you through Leicester and West Ham from 4:30. Now, Joey O'Brien has had a really interesting career, played over 100 times in the Premier League with Bolton and West Ham. Should have been much more, only for a huge amount of injuries. Played 5 times for the Republic of Ireland, came back home in 2018, signed with Shamrock Rovers, became a key part of that Rovers side that won the double and has won back-to-back titles, and he is now just starting out as Damien Duff's assistant at Shelbourne. We've been trying to get him on the show for quite a while, and he has finally given in and taken the call. Joey O'Brien, nice to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too.
How are you keeping?
Hey, you twisted my arm many times, so I thought I'd have to talk to you once.
Once and once only. You're with Shelbourne then, as Damien Duff's assistant. Are you done with playing?
Yeah, no, I'm done with playing. Yeah,
100%. You're not slyly registered as a player, are you?
No, that's me. So yeah, look, now I wanted to come back when I wanted to come back home. I wanted to play for Shamrock Rovers, so it sort of, luckily enough, I was able to do that. And yeah, I think I said at the time, it was a good way for me to end it. So that was it.
Yeah, not a bad way to go out with another title. How does being done sit with you?
Yeah, no, it's been it sits with me grand, to be honest. I haven't really had much time, to be honest, to sit back and reflect about it, or see if I made the right call or anything like that. It's just been full gas with the management side of things and being involved with the coaching side of things. So it's non-stop really. So I haven't really had much time, which has benefited me, I think, in a way. I've gone straight into this. So it's been great.
So I touched on your club career and the Premier League appearances and the time at Bolton and the time at West Ham. If we go back to the start then and going over to Bolton as a kid, at what were you, probably 15, 16 at that stage, going in working under Sam Allardyce, that was such an exciting time to be at a club like Bolton. I was looking back at your debut match. You came on for Fernando Hierro for a couple of minutes at the end of a League Cup game. Fernando Hierro at the time is a 3-time Champions League winner. Les Ferdinand, El Hadj Diouf, Kevin Nolan are on the bench. Like, there's any amount of superstars at the club. JJ Okocha is there. What was that like as a young kid coming over from Dublin into that sort of environment?
No, yeah, it was great, Like, obviously, you're naming them players there, but for me at the start, like, it was just like, I suppose, many kids over the years and lads, up until obviously the Brexit thing, we still went over at 15, 16 to try to have a dream, like, and try making, and that's how it started out for me. And obviously, luckily enough, like, obviously I think I took to full-time football really, really well, like, and I think people asked me what was the big thing for me, and that's what it was for me, like, going into that environment and just becoming a full-time footballer, getting coached every day and leading into games and all that. It just seemed I wouldn't have been one of the top 3, 4, 5 players in my age group going over to England in their age group, if you know what I mean. So,
right.
But to get over there, and I felt just a full-time training and just taking it all in and being able to put it into play and put it into my matches and stuff like that, and it really just stood to me, I think. And then from there, obviously within a year, I suppose, you start getting people's attention higher up at the club, like the first team manager and stuff like that. And then it just started, took off from there. As you said, you start training with these lads. It's like, you start naming these lads, but to you, it's just like you're trained against them, you know what I mean? You want to be better at them in training, you want to catch the manager's eye, you want to make sure that a player might be 10 years older than you or 15 years older than you, but you have to make sure that the manager thinks, yeah, this fella can do a job for me, you know, and that's how I was, you know. It didn't bother me who they were or what the names were. Your teammates then at that stage, you know what I mean? Just normal.
There's no day where you walk into training and, you know, JJ Okacha's pulling off all sorts of tricks, or Fernando Hierro's there, that you're thinking, wow, like this is where I am right now in my career.
No, I think, like, looking back on it, you know, I always remember, like, them sort of players, like, especially Fernando at the time. We would have been sort of playing at the time. The academy team would play the same as the first team, so it was obviously a 4-3-3. Would have been like a defensive midfielder, I suppose, and in that role, and that's where Fernando was playing at the first team sort of thing. And obviously he was an older player, he'd been around the block so much, but he had a great interest in, I suppose, looking at towards maybe the end of his own career, working with younger players and stuff like that. So he'd always be around the training pitch or hanging around, giving you little bits of a voice and stuff like that, you know. So obviously, look, at that time, I appreciated who he was again, but I suppose looking back on it now, you realise, like, the stuff that he even told me there on the training pitch, you know, I was able to take that on board and put it into my game, little things like that. So yeah, it was a great learning environment from that. But look, at the other side of that is as well, I wanted to get there and wanted to play. So the other side of it is, yeah, you have to be good enough to take this fella's position, you know. And that's, you don't have that mentality, you're not going to succeed.
Like, I'm never quite sure when you say about being fourth or fifth, you know, in the country when you're going over. You maybe weren't the best player in the country going over. Whether that's a modesty or whether that actually was something that was in your mindset when you went over, that actually I need to prove myself. I need to prove myself all the time, because, like, we had Stephen Bradley in here before Christmas, and, you know, he was the best actually when he went over. He'd admit this himself. Like, he was the best player in Ireland at an age group when he went to Arsenal. And maybe actually that was part of the difficulty for him when he went to Arsenal, that he'd had it too easy for too long. Did you feel that when you went to Bolton, you were still trying to prove an awful lot, that you were so, like, even to people back in Ireland, you were trying to prove something?
To be honest, I remember one of the first meetings, Chris Sully was the academy director at Bolton at the time. And huge influence on my early career, you know, and one of the reasons why I signed there. And then I remember he sat sort of all down. We were in the meeting room, and I think there was probably 11 first years at the time, all at the same. And I remember we all would have been 16-ish. 16 probably. And he just sort of said, like, listen, lads, come the end of this, there's only going to be 2 years left by the time you're 19. He says, and then there's probably going to be 1 year left at the football club by the time you're 21. And I always remember it to this day. I just sat around the room, looked around, said, you know what, it's going to be me. And that was it for me, you know. I suppose that was the mentality I had, and then with that mentality, I wanted to be that player, that was that last player at 21. And from that then, it was every day in training. Can you be the best player in training? Can I be the best player every match I played? And lived it, like, you know. I think I took it as an advantage, you know. People talk about Irish kids going over to England at that young age, and the negative sort of disadvantage it could be and stuff like that. For me, it was a huge positive. I used to look at those loads of local lads, or lads from the UK, I suppose, at my age group or in the academy. On the weekends, they used to be going out with their pals, going out trying to click a chick or whatever, you know. And, like, for me, I was just going home to dig. I was going in just preparing again for Monday morning training sessions, you know, and that's how I lived my life, like, for over there for that first part. That's what I was there for. I was there to play football. I was there to become a footballer.
That's a brilliant mindset. Like, that's not every 17, 18-year-old who has that mindset, because a lot of the 17, 18-year-olds want to be going out on the Friday, Saturday night as well. Like, that's a maturity beyond your years.
Yeah, but I suppose that's what I'm saying. The circumstances probably dictated that I hadn't got them options either, you know, sort of thing, because obviously I wasn't around anyone. All my family and friends were back home, really. So I was, and then obviously on the weekends and digs, all the rest of the local lads that I was off the team, they would have been going back to whatever part of the UK they were. Like, obviously there was a good few lads from down south and stuff like that go back down to their families' houses, you know, on the weekend after the games, which, you know, I hadn't got that option, obviously. So I was there. Now listen, I know my own experience and talking to kids, that boredom and that loneliness and that homesickness of not having stuff to do can really get on you. But look, I had them times as well, you know, at the start, and when I first went over, the loneliness and missing your family and friends. I mean, it's just a natural thing, I guess, that you have to, but you either put up with it if you really want it, I always feel, you know. And listen, for me, as I said, the aim was to become a Premier League footballer, and that was a thing that I had to go through to get to it.
And when you were around the training ground then, and Fernando Hierro is there playing in the same position for the first team, and Gary Speed is at the club, one of the all-time great Premier League midfielders. You've got the talent of a JJ Okocha around. Like, would you have looked back now and think, God, you were a sponge? You were looking at what they were doing. You were looking at how they handled themselves, both on the pitch, how they played the game, how they created space for themselves, and also around the dressing room, what their general attitude, how they behaved away from football. Were you looking at that? Were you aware at that stage there's a real opportunity for me to learn here?
Yeah, I don't know whether that start you really early. You know what I mean? Looking at that sort of side of stuff, I guess. And like with them, all the lads, like they're naming them, it's more just it's not like intentional things. It's just how they carry themselves day to day. Do you know what I mean? It's just a standard thing for them lads, like how they get in early, how they go to the gym beforehand, how they train, how they push themselves every day, how they recover, how they turn up on match days, how they're able to perform week in, week out. It's just that normal thing for them. So I guess in a way you do, but it's not that's massively out. It's not out of the ordinary if you get me for these blokes, you know, because they were doing it for so long, so it's just a natural thing for them at that stage when I was around them. But look, for me to get in with them players at that time at the club, yeah, it was a fantastic time at the football club, and I guess you see that now where the club is, you know. And looking back on it, you realise, I mean, to play in 2 European campaigns like for a club like Bolton Wanderers is, yeah, look, listen, it's probably never going to be done again, like, you know.
Yeah,
So,
it's the sort of thing that's hard to explain to the kids these days as to where Bolton were.
yeah, they were great times, and they had some great players, you know, especially them lads that you mentioned. Like I remember, like all of them, you know, again, they were all great people, like, you know, in around the place for young players coming into you, treat you really well, like, and helped you out as much as they could, like, you know. So it was a great thing. But look, as I said, like, I wanted to be there, you know, and I wanted to take their places, and you soon realise to be there, yeah, it's great, but being in all of them and all this sort of stuff, that's not going to benefit you to get to where what you want, you know. And I remember training one time, and I would have been a young player. It was a pre-season again. I suppose you had that natural fitness to just being a young player. A few of the lads, to take them a while. I remember Ivan Campo again, because it was a similar position at that time that I would have been in, like, and I would have been really started pre-season fit, fresh, ready to go. Ivan probably take the Mediterranean sort of way of easing himself back in, you know. And I remember in one of the training sessions, yeah, I was probably, for him, skipping around too much, you know, and he levelled me, like, you know. And it was one of them moments where it was like, yeah, listen, I'm still around. Don't start thinking you're too big for your boots, you know. And it's like, that's the other side of them lads as well. They have that killer instinct as well, you know, in them. That's why they got to that level, you know. So it was something that I learned as well from them.
Yeah, they weren't going to Bolton at 34, 35 on a jolly to play a couple of minutes here and there. They wanted to be out playing football week in, week out. What was Gary Speed like around the place? He was, you know, experienced player at that stage, 34, 35, like such a tragic end. But everything you've ever heard about Speed was like just a brilliant influence on the training pitch.
Yeah, like, yeah, brilliant guy as well for me. Like, you know, obviously when I started playing, Speed, I would have been obviously one of the main men playing. So yeah, look at, as you said, a huge Premier League player at that stage as well, watching him from years and all that. And yeah, great fella around the place. Yeah, great again as a midfielder, great to play with, talk to you about football, talk to you about general life. Actually bought me first pint of Guinness, like, so something that I always will remember as well.
So he was the one that he was trying. Maybe that was again the midfielder, much like Ivan Campo levelling you. The Gary Speed was like, I'll just get this lad a couple of drinks, get him started, and maybe he won't be as a high tempo in training the next day.
No, I mean, listen, I think you remember Gary Speed, probably one of the fittest players ever to play, like, sort of thing. So no, but yeah, it just happened one time we were out in Manchester, I got talking. I just said, no, I had a pint of Guinness, and you couldn't believe it. Obviously, he had a real had a lot of time for Dublin and fond memories of coming out to Dublin and stuff like that, and he couldn't believe it. So he was like, yeah, listen, we're going for a pint, and ended up going into a back street bowser in Manchester and having 2 points against, you know.
It's a good memory to have. Sam Allardyce was probably your biggest fan when you were playing in the Premier League with Bolton and with West Ham. Like, it's funny now we look back at Allardyce, and, you know, football has moved on, they would say, and that Sam Allardyce is sort of seen as old school. But we're just talking earlier on, like, Sam Allardyce at Bolton was one of the first to realise the importance of stats, of analysis, of the amount of information you could get for players, how you could break it down into nice little bite-sized chunks. He was very much ahead of his time, and was one of the reasons that Bolton were so successful, was that they were doing things that other clubs weren't. What was Allardyce like to work with in those early days?
Yeah, brilliant. Like, you know, as you said at the time, like, so, yeah, forward thinking and with a lot of ideas. Like, I actually remember in the training ground, you know, I suppose before it became the whole Moneyball team, before they came out, I remember my man Billy Bean obviously in the training ground, you know, before people knew who the Oakland A's were, sort of thing, you know what I mean? And so he was that far ahead of it.
So Billy Bean would have been over at Bolton?
Yeah, he was in the training ground, yeah. And I obviously remember, like, you know, looking back at a lot of the players then that Sam would have signed them for Bolton, again, would have been these sort of players that, yeah, were, I don't know, people may have thought were finished or were on the scrap heap or whatnot, you know, but he was able to get that, I know, 1, 2, 3 years out of him, and that propelled the football club up to levels that would never have been possible. And obviously, again, on the budget like that, he was able to pay these players that probably couldn't get it anywhere else, you know what I mean? But he was able to put a lot of time and effort into the prevention, the rehabilitation of them, the nutrition side of stuff, the physical stats, everything, to make sure he had them in top shape come the Saturday and to get an extra couple of years out of them, which, look, it's that's what was built on a lot of the success. He was able to find a way to, his man management skills obviously were brilliant, and he was able to find a way to attract these players to a club like Bolton at a time, like obviously where, I remember Yuri Jorkia, for instance, he was probably the first sort of player to come on board, the first player that Sam was able to sort of attract from that top quality of player. And yeah, it was he was able to just tap in because Yuri wanted to play in the World Cup, you know, and he was able to sort of tap into that and convince him that was going to be, if he came over here and did well at Bolton, that he was able to do that, you know. And it obviously happened, and then from Yuri then it sort of snowballed to other players that sort of seen that, JJ and Ivan and Fernando Hierro and stuff like that, and other players, you know. And it was, again, I think in the later even years, Nicholas Anelka, I think, was, again, he'd been around, obviously had a great career in England at the time, but then I think he was over in Turkey and he was trying to get back in, and basically none of the Champions League teams would take him in England at that time. And I think Sam met him and sort of just sold him and saying, listen, come here, play for us, you'll bang in the goals, and then you're back in there, and then one of them will take you. And obviously he was able to convince Nicholas that would happen, and yeah, look, it did in the end, and Chelsea bought him off Bolton, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned his man management there. Was he the type of manager who treated everybody the same? Would he, you know, treat you the same as a Yuri Georgiev and Nicholas Anelka, or was the genius of his man management he knew exactly everybody's personality and what made them tick?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like, you know, knew different players, knew how to get into different players, knew what players to have a go at, knew what players you couldn't have a go at, stuff like that, you know. Yeah, I would have been definitely one of the players that he was able to get into and use it and show it in front of other players, you know. That he knew what, obviously at this stage, especially at West Ham later on, I'd played with him for a long time, I'd had a relationship with him, but still, like, at times he would go through you know what I mean? And other players, he wouldn't have been able to probably go for them as deep as that, but he knew the response that he was going to get in the dressing room off it, and he knew that it wouldn't have a negative effect on me, you know, on my play. And I think that was the key, like, you know what I mean? He was able to roll you in a way that, yeah, it winds you up. And
could you bite back at him? Could you have a row with him?
Oh yeah, like, look, he's the not that I would fancy him, I wouldn't take him on or whatever, like, you know, but you could obviously go back at him, but he look, he's a big man, isn't he? So, like, when he loses the head, you know, you know about it.
Yeah, I only interviewed him once ever after a Sunderland game, and I think they'd just been beaten, and I hadn't realised just how big a man he was until you're standing nose to nose and he's quite angry about a defeat that's just happened. You're right, I think he is all man and not to be messed with. You obviously got the couple of pints of Guinness with Gary Speed. Was Big Sam a socialise with the players type of manager, or was he let you do what you wanted and then stay away?
You wouldn't socialise with the players and all that, but again, and look, something that I would definitely, in my own career, definitely there was a time and a place for it, like, you know, and he was a huge part of that, you know, making sure that there was a team spirit and that all the lads felt were together and stuff like that, and if there was nights out, he encouraged obviously at the right times, you know. But look, there was other times where I remember, for instance, I was gonna go to I had tickets booked for a Celtic Barcelona game over in the Nou Camp, and we are going. A few of the lads were going over. 5, 6 of us, we are going over. We had everything sorted. It was on a day off, planned day off, and listen, the result wasn't well. It didn't go well on a Saturday, and that was the end of it. You know, so there was stuff like that. I remember Christmas parties at Bolton at the time. We were going to Dublin as well, and everything was ready. We were leaving the stadium to go to the airport. Bang, cancelled. Good luck. So look, it wasn't just you were doing it at the right time, and if you didn't feel it was right, you went down it, you know.
When you look back over your time in England and you go through season on season, so you make your debut in the 04-05 season the following year, there's 23 league appearances. The following season there's nothing. A year after that there's 19, then there's 7, then there's nothing. You go off on loan to Sheffield Wednesday, then you end up at West Ham with Sam Allardyce again, where there's a year in the Championship, 32 games, Premier League 33, 17, 9-0. There's obviously a lot of injuries in there along the way as well. Now that you're done with playing, do you look back and in any way think what might have been if the injuries hadn't happened at certain times? Are you comfortable with this is just the career of a footballer? You've seen all sorts through the years, guys who things have fallen for, guys who things haven't fallen for. How do you look back on it?
I mean, look, I think a lot of people in the press and the media and stuff like that look back and would talk a lot about the injuries and talk. Look, I look back and I have a lot of, I think about the games and the moments and the timings, Look at the other side, that is, I played in 2 European campaigns. By the time I was probably 22, 23, I think, and had some great nights and played against some great teams, and Atletico Madrid and Sporting Lisbon and basically every team in the Premier League and stuff like that, So, I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at it. I suppose, for me, with the injuries, I couldn't have done anything more. I think the amount of time I missed to still come back and to be able to play at the level that I did, to not kick a ball for 2.5 years basically and have 3 knee operations, I think to come back and at that age and then still be able to go on and play in the Premier League afterwards, I mean, I don't know whether there's many players that have done that, so
no.
There's some stuff like that it's, you look back at it and you think it's good stuff, but as I said, most media and people like that on the outside maybe look at all the injuries and think, oh jeez, well, he was this and he was that. I look at it and think to some teams and some venues and some games I played in that, man, some people, I was lucky, some people can only dream of it.
Yeah, that is for sure. Were you able to have that sort of perspective when you were in the midst of it, when you're in the midst of that 2.5 years where you're not sure if you're going to go back and play Premier League football again? Were you able to say, you know what, I've had some, even if it doesn't work out, I've had some really good times? Because, you're obviously a much younger man at that stage. You're probably still 25, 26. Were there difficult days then, or did you always manage to maintain that sort of perspective?
No, without a doubt, yeah, definitely difficult days. You know what I mean? I went from, I had 3 knee operations on the same knee. It was obviously one after the other without getting back. As I said, I went from, the dates. I still remember the dates. It was like October 2008 to February 2011 without playing a competitive game. So I mean, I knew I had some unreal. I had to go have surgeries in America, rehabbed over in Vermont with Bill Knowles, a guy that rehabbed with Tiger Woods and Alex Rodriguez. I mean, I was everywhere. I went to Muller Wolfhard. I went for injections. I went for it wasn't as if I was just off the scene. I was doing serious work, And never gave up. I remember at the time, Gary Mexon, how I became close and done great for me and helped me out a lot through my career. He asked me to go out and do a bit of scouting for him when I was out. And I was like, nah. Because at that time, I wasn't taking my eye off getting back, and that was it. And listen, that was maybe, I don't know, a rash decision with me, but I just didn't want to be seen to think that if I was out doing a bit of scouting or doing something on the side of that, I was taking my eye off the ball to try to get back, and it just wouldn't happen. Then when I left Bolton at the time, I got released. I hadn't played in a long time. I was thinking, yeah, what's going to happen here? But at that stage, I knew the knee was okay. Because I'd been through so much with it at that stage, I sort of knew it was right. And look, I suppose, I got thrown a bone, really, Sam threw me a bone and I ran after it and that was it. But even in that, I remember when I came back, the first game of the season against Cardiff, he played in the Championship game, and Sam, I suppose at that time, he obviously knew I was out for a long time. He had me playing as a kid, obviously. And I remember him saying to me, Jays, it must feel great to get back. Right before kick-off, it must great to be back. And I says, nah. I says, not back. I says, this time next year I'll be back in the Premier League. And that was my mindset the whole way through it. You know, rightly or wrongly, people say, "Jeez, you weren't even that good." But my mindset was a Premier League footballer, you know, and that's what I was. And I wasn't back until I got back to that. I suppose after I got back to that, it was a step I had to go to the Championship to get back to the Premier League, and that was it for me, you know. And then when I was able to go back, then I was like, yeah, well, let's go again now.
Yeah,
you know?
Like it's a brilliantly positive mindset to have, and one that you probably had to have considering the position you were in. And like during those 2.5 years, like, and you're turning down the scouting opportunity. Because I was about to ask that, you know, you're 26, 27. Are you having to start thinking about what if I don't get back? Like people around you, people you trust, agents, family, friends. Like, are they saying, you know what? Maybe you need to start thinking about getting coaching badges in. Maybe you need to start thinking about what is next. Or do you just have no time for anybody who's talking to you like that?
Yeah, like I know. Yeah, man. I look back with family. Obviously, were huge, you know. Girlfriend at the time, she was my wife, obviously now. But yeah, huge. Stuff like that was huge, man. I was touching on before. Media, faith in God was huge. A huge help for me, huge comfort for me. So yeah, I had these sort of these strengths around me, I suppose, that helped me along. But look, for me, I remember the physio at Bolton. I had been over, I think this was maybe the second or third knee surgery I had on the yoke, and he had said to me, I was over rehabbing with a guy, as I said, Bill Knowles, and he was brilliant, you know, and he was basically took on my rehab. But I remember the physio at the time at Bolton, he brought up about, maybe like, look at, geez, you know, this period of time, this is going to go right, you might have to start looking at it, you might look at something else, I don't know whether you'll be able to. No, he says, look, you're done, pal. You know, and that was it for me, man. He was cut loose. You know, he didn't deal with me. I didn't deal with him again then. Do you know, and because I felt that he wasn't invested, he didn't believe that. He hadn't got the belief in me that I could get back. So I felt if I was working with him, you know, he wouldn't be putting it in. He wouldn't be putting 100% in because deep down he didn't believe that I was going to get back. So I just basically cut him loose at the time as the head physio of the football club, and just walked myself, had my own fella on the side, walked through the doctor at the club, went and walked with Bill through mad stuff, you know.
And did you ever allow yourself feel sorry for yourself? Did you ever have days on the couch saying, maybe, just maybe it's not going to happen? Yeah, listen, there's no point in me making out here, listen, every day of the week, man. There was times, obviously, you're rehabbing, you think you're doing it, you know, you think you're sorry, you think you're next of all, it's not, you know, you're crying, like, you know, you're broken hearted, you know, you have to go out again. It's just, what do you do, like, what are you going to do, you know? And so I always say to people, like, when you're in, just, what are you going to do about it? You know, you either take it, move on, or stay there, wallow, you know. And for me, I always had them moments of, geez, little doubts maybe seep in, but, you know, you need it. I always never lost fact of the what I wanted and where I wanted to go again, and they just knew, just go again. And I mean, at times people probably thought, geez, you're fucking crazy, like, you know, because as I said, the amount of surgery I had and the amount of rehab and stuff, and where I had to go then in America to sort of base myself to rehab, to go out, to come back, to go back out, just constant, you know. But like, look, as I said, it was you're obsessed, aren't you? You know, it was my profession, it's what I love, so it was an obsession. So I just didn't want to let it go. How's the knee now?
Yeah, well, yeah, look, it's grand now. But it's actually funny enough, by the time that all finished, and then really when I got back and started playing with it at the year at West Ham, from that moment on, I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't really remember missing. I don't think I ever really missed a game again. Well, with that knee, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So.
Just watch the old coaches five-a-sides now at Shells with Duffer trying to twist the inside and out. It might have put a little bit of pressure on it. Would you stick with us for a couple of minutes there? Because we just want to take a quick break. I do want to chat about, as you say, the return then at West Ham and all the good stuff that happened back at Rovers. Liverpool 2-0 up against Leicester. They battered them in the second half. And Diogo Jota's just got the second in the final minute, set up by Joel Matip. So both goals for Jota. Salah's on the pitch as well. Liverpool 2, Leicester 0 in injury time. And Arsenal 1-0 up away at Wolves in injury time. Joey O'Brien's with us. Stick with us here on Off the Ball.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.
You're welcome back to the Football Show. Nathan with you this evening. Diogo Jota with 2 goals has given Liverpool a 2-0 win over Leicester in the Premier League at Anfield. So Liverpool back to within 9 points of Manchester City with a game in hand. Arsenal 1-0 up away at Wolves deep into injury time at Molineux. That'll have them up in 5th in the Premier League table and right in the mix for the top 4. 53106 is the text number. Joey O'Brien, formerly of Bolton, of West Ham, of Shamrock Rovers, and now working with Damien Duff at Shelbourne, is with us. We're looking back in his career. Joey, we've just been talking about the injury in the 2.5 years and the hard work, the incredible hard work it took to get back. And Sam Allardyce comes in and takes that chance on you, gives you an opportunity in the Championship. Brilliant season for West Ham, end up getting promoted, winning the playoff final. You play practically every game. You mentioned there that you said to Sam Allardyce before that first match against Cardiff, it'll be a year and then I'll be back and I'll be a Premier League player. When were you back? When did you feel, when was Joey O'Brien at his absolute peak?
I don't know. I don't know whether I ever got to the peak, but yeah. No, it was just, that was my comment when he just sort of said it to me, you know. It was just that whole thing of, wait, go back in the Premier League, then we're back sort of thing, you know. I think that was me personally, and then obviously us as a football club, and himself obviously as a manager, like sort of thing. So it was maybe that was the comment, really, the meaning behind that sort of comment by me. But look, I suppose that a couple of years at West Ham, that 2-3 years, you know, it was some good stuff, especially his first year back in the Premier League. We are like good, a great dressing room, great group of lads, the manager assembled, and good squad of players, real good players, and it's just a great place to be around. Obviously, it's a massive football club as well, so it was great to be part of that.
Yeah, and those last couple of years at Upton Park as well, they've settled into the London Stadium finally, I think now, but it took a while. But yeah, Upton Park, when it was going well, was a pretty special place to play.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, look, boy, I remember obviously going out at Bolton at times, and it used to be the same then playing. You know, you'd always be the same sort of mentality in the away dressing room. It was always like, you know, just getting them. The fans will start turning if the game's not going their way over the 25th half an hour. Listen, I experienced that as a player, you know. It was similar years later then when I was a West Ham player, you know. You know, the fans could easily turn on you as well, like, you know, if they weren't happy or if they didn't like what they were seeing, or, you know. So it was always one of them places. But again, the flip of that, like, look, I think it's a bit like James's Park, really, you know. It's the same sort of thing, you know. If you have them on your side, it's unbelievable, like, you know.
You went up against some incredible players in those few seasons in the Premier League with West Ham. Like, it was around that time Suarez was at his absolute peak with Liverpool, like Sergio Aguero. I remember, I think you were playing the final day of the season at the Etihad when Manchester City had to win the league ahead of Liverpool, and you were playing with West Ham that day when City got the victory, and that's like a star-studded City side with Aguero and Dzeko and Nasri at his peak, and Vincent Kompany scores that day. Robin van Persie is exceptional for Manchester United. Who are the players you remember from those couple of years in the Premier League that were the most difficult to mark, to go up against?
Yeah, look at all them players there, but for me it was like probably at the very start, you know, maybe at the very start of my career, the first year when I was playing the Premier League with Bolton at the time, you know, like that would have been players then that a few years earlier you would have been just like literally watching a match of the day, you know. And the older you get, it's sort of slightly different. You're just obviously then going up against rivals, you know what I mean, sort of thing. Whereas like that first year now, like obviously Dennis Bergkamp and players like that, or Alan Shearer, they were like players that I would have played against at the start of my career, which I suppose, you know, you hold like sort of, you know, 2-3 years beforehand, you're watching them a match of the day, or, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So there was a lot of them players that.
And an Alan Shearer, I'd imagine, is looking at a kid coming in for Bolton thinking, fresh meat, I am the toughest, meanest striker the Premier League has ever seen. I'm going to latch on to this kid.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But yeah, listen, as I said to you, that's why most of them have to. That's why you need that killer instinct as well in your own game, you know, to say. It happens. I remember playing as well one of the first times against Arsenal, Henry, you know, it's the same, you know, going out and test this young kid, you know. I knew it was going to happen, so that's where you have to be able to deal with it, you know what I mean, and take it on. Otherwise, you know, you're swimming in the deep end with no armbands, you know, you're not going to last long. Like, the manager's going to take you off, it's going to be the next man up, and that could be your chance gone, you know.
Yeah. Was the Premier League a very different place by the time you were finishing from when you first started out? Like, the money had obviously exploded. Was not
particularly. No, do you know? Like, I mean, at that them times, them players, them Arsenal players, that the Arsenal team we would have started off against, obviously, like Henry and Perez and stuff like that. Them types of players are still playing. You know, like Bergkamp, obviously, probably better than was better team when I finished. Like better team than it was when I finished. Like, you know,
they hated Bolton.
Had the United team that had like probably the team that again, like, you know, they had like Ronaldo, Tevez, and Rooney as a front three. So, you know, so probably, I don't know, it was probably better then than it was when I finished, sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Arsenal side hated that Bolton side, didn't they? They detested having the way he approached it.
Yeah, no, look, and it was one of them times we had some great results. I actually remember, like, some of the games, listen, he didn't like it, and that was the thing. I think that was the thing at the time. They were a super team. That Arsenal team were a super team, you know. But I think obviously everyone got a hold of it. I suppose the media got a hold of it. I think there was probably a little bit maybe dislike there between the two managers, probably how he played or how he went about the tactics or sort of stuff. So yeah, and then us as players in the dressing room, you know, he played in that. But look, at that time, like, I mean, I think people from the outside seeing all that and sort of said, that Bolton, that this and that, you're just going to kick lumps out of them. But like, we had some super players, you know, like, and I think in a way I sort of needled some of our players that had that, like JJ and these guys, even Campo and Bruno and Gotti playing centre. You know, I mean, these lads would have fancied themselves as top players, you know, like, and would have thought, no, I'm not getting the respect that I deserve as a player. Like, I'm well able to play and better than these lads off Arsenal, some of them, you know. So I think that needled them a little bit on the actual games. Their performance of ball playing players, or if you want to call them that, you know, was exceptional and was better than Arsenal's, you know.
How do you look back in your time with Ireland? 5 caps for the Republic of Ireland. You made your debut in Steve Staunton's first game in charge, the victory against Sweden, where I think everyone thought this was the start of a bright new era for Irish football. There was a long gap. You got back in under Trapattoni, made a few appearances there. Most players we talked to, they played for, again, they lived the dream. They played for their country. They got those caps. Are you satisfied with those caps, or do you look back and think maybe you deserved a few more?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say I look back and think I deserve a few more. I think you look back, I suppose, and think, you see, I suppose maybe even after the injuries, like the games that I did play in and the time I was around, the level I was probably operating at the time, like maybe there was chances that I could have played more, do you know what I mean, and stuff like that. I was in a lot of squads, a hell of a lot more squads than actually I ever got on the pitch for, I suppose, so stuff like that. And when you were fit, but look, it is what it is, you know. It's as you said, like, to do it once, I suppose, is great. Like, you know, obviously, would you like to do it a few more times, of course, but yeah, it is what it is.
It's funny how quickly the landscape, obviously, of Irish football has changed, that a player playing week in, week out in the Premier League nowadays would be guaranteed to be getting appearances for the Republic of Ireland squad, but there was probably that bit more depth back then and a few more options.
Without a doubt. I mean, look at the squad. When I first got into the squad as a young player, my first squad, I think at the time, like, as you said, that Steve Staunton's first game, I remember I was rooming at the time with Stephen Orden, I guess, you know, and at that time, Stephen were obviously playing, you know, I would have played the majority of the season, like, in that first year, with me and him would have been the same sort of age, I suppose, and that same sort of, that fourth season was about the fourth season. But again, you were looking at it, I remember around the time, looking at it thinking, you know, geez, I hope I get a shout, sort of thing. You know, and it wasn't like a guarantee that you would get a show, even though you were playing over there. And I suppose that was, at the time, this, as you said, the strength, the depth of the squad. And I even remember the first training sessions and that training camp. You know, for me, the level was, it was really high. Like, and I was coming from a club that was operating around the top 6, 7 of the Premier League at the time, you know. So, yeah, the players were, there were some top players, huh?
Yeah. You have this brilliant final stage of your career then, where you come back home and you play with Shamrock Rovers for 4 seasons. You win the FAI Cup, that long wait for Rovers, back-to-back league titles. Like, when you came back first, Stephen Bradley spoken about this, that, you know, there's always links of players moving home, and he was so keen to make sure he got the right personality, and, you know, he got that with you. He got somebody who was coming over, who'd achieved so much, but still had something he really wanted to prove. It looked like you were absolutely loving your football over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. It was something that I wanted to do, you know. I was, I suppose even when I was playing over in England, you know, it was always something that I wanted to come back and finish over in Ireland, like finish playing football, finish in the League One. Would have been obviously something that was there, you know. And so again, doing it for a club that I support and a club that I went to watch and a club that I went to watch during the summers and the off seasons and stuff like that, obviously made it matter to me more, you know what I mean? And that's why I did. Like, I'd obviously seen players that followed the league, I'd seen players coming back, maybe that whatever, like, what coming back and you are getting paid money because of their name or whatever like that and stuff like that, you know, and not really doing it. So, I mean, I definitely didn't want to do that. And for me personally, like sometimes, you know, I didn't want it to be the end because sometimes that's what you're remembered by. So I wanted to obviously come in and make sure it made an impact and to play. Look, it came about because through a cousin of mine who was a huge Shamrock Rovers fan. He had to connect with the chairman, Jonathan Roach, who became really close with, you know, over my period of time there, and that's how it really came about. It was just more of a desire for me to come and play than anything else, really, you know.
And for a lot of those young players in the Rovers squad, well, I guess the roles had flipped from when you were starting out. You now were the senior player with the reputation who had come in that had a big influence, and Jesus was really noticeable during the COVID times when football returned and there was no fans, and you could hear every single word the players were were shouting and roaring. You had plenty to say for yourself when you're on the pitch. There was no shortage of advice. You were a real leader in that dressing room, as you'd expect.
Look, I think obviously with the fans, maybe I came to know, but it's always going to be like, I was like that in any before, and I was like that for years when I was a younger player, you know. It's always probably always had that in part of my game. The communication part and the talking about it, and for me, it's just a huge part of. It's a tool that not enough players use, you know. It's something I talk about with the young players. Never mind in their dressing room at Shamrock Rovers, the younger players, as when I got involved the coaching up at the football club under 15s, 17s, it's a huge thing, like, you know. And for me, it's I actually. Andy O'Brien, who was a good friend of mine, he opened my eyes when I was actually playing for Ireland in my debut. He was the talker. He talked me through the whole game, really. He made the game so much easy just through that. And afterwards, it was just something like that. This, like, you know, it's such a tool for your own, to help your team, sort of thing. And that's why I sort of seen it, you know what I mean? I tried to bring it into my own game and stuff like that. And then obviously the older you get, I suppose, you have a better understanding of the game. It's not when you're just roaring and shouting. It's obviously giving like an instruction or an encouragement or a timing or a rollicking or stuff like that. And I think it becomes, the older you get, a lot easier because your experience of the game and managing the game, you know, you have a trust in how you play and what you need to do in your own individual game. So it's not just that, it's being able to come outside your own moment and your own individual performance for the greater good, like, you know what I mean? And that's for me is what I just seen as a tool to help the team, you know.
So the move to Shelbourne, then the retirement from playing and moving into the coaching side of things with Damien Duff, was Duffer someone you would have stayed in touch with throughout your career? Was it a natural progression?
No, not at all. Like, you know, I wouldn't have. Obviously when I came back and started playing at Rovers, yeah, the manager was was up there in the underage set up and coaching up there and stuff like that. Yeah, but again, wouldn't have had a closer relationship at all, really, you know. And then it just sort of developed as, yeah, he sort of, when I spoke to him and stuff like that, and it came about. But yeah, wouldn't have many conversations or anything like that over the years, right? No.
Yeah. So now that you're working together, he was talking yesterday briefly about the job and how it's this 24/7 thing. He's a bit shocked about just how all-encompassing it is. How are you finding working with Damien Duff? Have you similar outlook on how football should be played, on tactics and setup? You know, is it a good cop, bad cop routine? How's it all working?
I don't know. Look, for me, like, obviously I would have heard stuff about him from outside and seen his coaching and seen his standard of his quality of his coaching and stuff like that. But so it was stuff like that. But again, look, it was a main factor why I wanted to come work at Shelbourne obviously was the manager, like, you know. And yeah, he's obviously first class, you know, and the level of detail and standards, man, and that for me, like, is what elite level football is, like, you know. It's standards and demands, and that's what you ask as a player, that's what you ask as a staff, that's what I want to be asked, you know what I mean, to have a certain level, to making sure that my coaching and my detail and everything in regards to preparing the team and helping the management and helping the football club is at that level of the demands and the standards that are set by him as the manager, you know. And he obviously leads that and sets that by the example that he sets himself in them regards of the standards and the demands.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, Joey. Thanks a million for coming on tonight and chatting about your career and chatting about Shells. I think everyone's really excited to see what happens with Shells this season, starting next week, and hopefully we catch you over the season as well. Thanks a lot, Joey.
Great, no bother.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Catch the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports.